know what's amazing is that every time I post a question box on my Instagram, it's really such validation that we are all contending with the same or similar themes at the same time. And I've been able to really take the temperature of this arc that we all are going through individually as humans that unites us as we go towards this new paradigm. So, what I wanted to do in this episode is talk to you a little bit about the things that I'm seeing reoccur that we're re-questioning together, or maybe in silence and not really sharing with anyone else that we're like questioning stuff or worried about stuff, and just give you a glimpse into this new paradigm. If you've been with me for a while, you will know that in 2018, I recorded a video on the website, myhumandesign.com. You can still find it there, about exactly the fact that we would be coming to a change in paradigm in 2027, and that the closer we would get to 2027, the faster things would crumble around us and the more fast new things would come in. And that is not my original idea. That was what was in the original download of human design when it was given to the man who channeled it in 1987. So even though maybe it seems like now you see a lot of people talk about things changing, it's almost like, okay, well, are we just saying things are changing because they're obviously changing and everyone's trying to be an expert at something? But I want you to know that it's not that people are making this up. It's that maybe people are getting on the bandwagon, but it's always been told. And no matter what modality you look at, there was always some kind of prophecy about how Earth cycles through times of various darkness and light, various individuality, collectiveness, tribalness, certain levels of consciousness. And everyone has kind of different seeming explanations for it, but really they all boil down to the same thing. There's a few people who've talked about the age of Aquarius. And with the age of Aquarius, some people said 1987, some people say 2000, some people say 2012, and then there's other people that say 2027. And my belief is that these things are the universe's way of giving us grace with the changes. They have to happen at a slow enough pace that we can physically handle, like from our auras, from our nervous system, from your whole life can't be changing from one day to the next. You wouldn't know how to handle it. You need to have this graceful unwinding and learning to adjust to it before it fully comes in, by having these like subtle cues start to come in before all of a sudden something seems to change out of nowhere. So this new paradigm, as we get closer, everybody is feeling more intensely about everything. And yes, you might feel that it's more intensely negative, but I also want us to remember that it's also more intensely positive. And that right now, we can have a life that is better than what we ever thought was normal or possible when we were born, because that wasn't a possibility that was painted to us at the time. And every time we're taking the temperature of what life is, we're taking it on already old evidence, because what is currently true is true because someone in the past made it so. So we're making this big leap as a society right now, and we are being asked to believe before it is made manifest, which sounds very difficult, but that's also the way that anything has ever been achieved, is that someone has to have an illogical belief and faith in something that right now they look around and everyone else is going to say no but, or oh what if, or your own internal voice is going to say this isn't going to work, you're crazy, or whatever. If it's coming from a wish in your heart, know that not only did it not come from you, it's the way that the universe is trying to get you to move on, but it's also that you didn't come up with it yourself, so you don't have to question if it's good or not. You just have to realize that it's your duty to do the dream that's in your heart, just like it's everybody else's reality and destiny and duty to do the dream that's in theirs. And how we build this new paradigm brick by brick is by everybody honoring their specific role that is coming to them from a call from the soul. So I gathered a couple of different topics that people are contending with when it comes to moving into the new paradigm. And I also just want to add here that if you want fuller breakdowns on exactly how the new paradigm works and why it's coming in and what's coming next, there is a section in the app called Energy Updates. And if you go in there, you get a monthly workshop every single month about exactly where we're at and exactly what's coming next and the kind of spiritual work that we have to be doing at any given time as we march slowly towards this new paradigm. Now, the new paradigm is also not going to be that on March the 10th, 2027, we're going to wake up and it's going to be totally different. It's that from that point of view, it will be a totally different experience of reality than even us being as close to it now of 18 months away is inconceivable. And I don't just mean that in terms of the way we live life, but the way we understand life, the way we see matter moving around us, the way we interact with the ethers and the cosmos, and the way we feel ourselves inside, and the ways that we understand how our brains go and our ability to connect with other people in ways that, we know about telepathy, but there's so many other ways that we don't even yet know about or can't even imagine yet. So it's up to us to really create that future by being as open-minded as we possibly can and not needing to know the answers to feel safe with where this is going. And I spoke about this on my stories earlier, that yes, you can be afraid, and yes, you should feel whatever organic feelings are coming up in you. But there's a very big difference between feeling fear and processing it and sitting with yourself and being able to say, okay, well, now we either need to reframe this or we need to take action, or what do I need to change in my life as a response to what this fear is kind of asking me to do about it. There's a very big difference between that, which is a healthy processing of a negative emotion, which we all need to learn how to do with all the negative emotions that come up in us, whether it's judgment or fear, or sadness or loneliness or shadow, anything that is control, lack, fear, not good enough, all of that stuff. We need to have these dates with ourselves where we sit ourselves down and say, right, let's deal with this, me and me together. But there's a very big difference between that and staying in fear because it's a comfort zone, because it's all we've known, because it's the underlying currency that the world is suggesting to us all day, every day, that we should be running on that and staying there. And also the more insidious suggestion that staying in fear and worry and letting your heart bleed out for other people at the expense of your own life force is meaning that you're a caring person. And that's the way that you show empathy. That's what's expected of you, because otherwise people are going to think you're a bad person and the world might come after you, or you might get cancelled, or any of that stuff. The most insidious lie that we buy into that prevents the light from coming in is that holding on to a baseline fearful state or a baseline anxious state means that you are a good person. So let's get rid of that. Let's get to the specific topics. Someone said, when is the new world arriving and what will it look like? I would suggest that you do a deep dive on either that new paradigm original video, which is on myhumandesign.com, or go into the workshops on the app in the energy update section. Someone else said, why do we resist our passions and what lights us up the most? Because we live in a world which is perfectly set up to push us and encourage us to, out of our own free will, go back to the light. And if there was only light in this world, it would not be a journey. And there would be no point in being here, because we want to have light not just because it was given to us, because otherwise we would stay angels, we would stay part of the divine. We want to create this journey of forgetting as babies that we are coming from the light and move back towards it at the end of our lives. So the reason why we resist our passions and what lights us up the most is because the internal opponent, the internal actual favorite companion that ensures that we choose to move towards the light, is the fact that we have fears and resistance and lack mentality. And we see that that controls a lot of us because it has become the predominant frequency of our collective energy field. That's what the world seems to run on at the moment. That's the currency or the fuel by which most of us, try to thrive, which in a very basic way is make money, get by, be successful, and so on and so forth. But that is the thing that's crumbling. In order for that to crumble, we have to understand that for every desire that we have, there is an equal and opposite, if not slightly stronger, depending on if we let it, force that is going to do a very good job. It's the best spin doctor that we have, pointing us in the opposite direction and giving us an amazing case for why we should not do that. And it's embedded in us so that we can ensure that we would never be without that opposing force that creates the polarity and the duality to create that combustion of movement towards the light. So what we want to do is we want to transcend our fears. We want to transcend our resistance to things, meaning that when we sense a fear coming up or we sense a resistance coming up, we want to say, I so get you, but you are not me. And you want to imagine almost having your eyes go above the fear and say, oh, I get that the fear is not a real thing when it's like a one that's holding us back. The fear is the test itself that I need to see, spot, and choose not to listen to and go do the exact opposite thing that it's convincing me to do. So we resist our passions because that's where potential for light is. And therefore, that's where the inner opponent will come in and try to give you the test. Try to see if you actually will move towards that thing, because it's actually the choice of moving towards a thing that transforms you. It's not the getting to the outcome of revealing the light. It's actually in the hero's journey of choosing the light when there is also the presence of an opportunity to not choose the light. So that's why we resist a lot of things that our souls are calling us to do, because of that exact reason that was the best way that the light could ensure that, yes, if we wanted free will, it gave it to us, but it would embed something in us that would push us towards that tension, that push-pull that makes us uncomfortable enough or makes us suffer enough or makes us not like our lives enough to one day say, you know what, F the fears. It's worth it to me now, even if the fears feel real, even if the fears feel risky. But I remember one of my first sessions with my first spiritual teacher, who is Ruth Nahmias, who is a Kabbalistic astrologer. I met her 17 years ago now. And I remember one of the first things that she said to me was, the universe, when it wants you to do something, it sends you very subtle tests. And when you don't listen to the subtle test, it sends you a louder test, and it sends you a louder test, and it sends you a louder test, until, God forbid, one day, it's a much more harsh situation. And I remember being 23 and leaving the Kabbalah Center at that time, the one in London. And it was cold and rainy outside, and it was only 4 p.m. in the middle of winter. And I remember one of my first true prayers to God, which was, please, it makes me emotional to think about, please send me the strength and the ability to listen to the tests when they are subtle and to hear them when they are small. Give me that grace. And if you do, I promise you I will listen. And I'm saying that because I want to share it with you, because if you feel called to use that, please do. Because that's really what this is about, is that the light gives us so many opportunities for growth. And we are just so more used to believing that the fear voice is more real than the soul whisper, that instead of waiting until life makes the soul voice louder or the fear just unlivable with, we can start to practice not listening to the fears when it's easier to do so. And the reason I say this now is because it's really more than important. It's absolutely critical to train yourself proactively to unsubscribe from all of your fears. Someone else asked about how do you not judge people with different or problematic political views? We did an episode recently about how sometimes judgment is not a negative thing. It's called It's Okay to be Judgmental. And we reframed in that episode the fact that judgment can sometimes mean that you are energetically reading something that doesn't feel right, doesn't feel of the highest. And that's okay. And it's important to trust your own energetic antenna, which we all have. And sometimes we are being convinced that something is good with very clever outside marketing, but we don't realize that enough of us are also silently thinking, I can't tell you exactly why, but this isn't totally sitting with me. Even if it seems like it's 99% great, there's a little something that's off, and let me not ignore that. So from that point of view, judgment is not a negative thing. If you're picking up that someone has views that are coming from them still trying to hold on, them still trying to be right, them trying to be aggressive, them trying to act out of their own threatened position in their own lives, and they need something to be true, or they need to convince you in a slightly abrasive way that they're correct, or something like that, to convince themselves that they are okay. So none of that you should be okay with. And this is where it becomes very nuanced, that I can't give you a this means always that or that means always this. It's like you have to hone your own ability to read energy, because you have to know when there is a difference between that kind of judgment, which is the energy reading of like why someone is acting the way they do and being so charged around their views, versus your own discomfort or your own judgment, and it's kind of sending you into a tailspin about what other people are busy doing and thinking and feeling because they're wrong, and that semi-threatens the thing that you know to be true. And I'm by no means saying that any government right now is doing it in the correct way, far from it. But I am going to say that, firstly, governments and people in power only reflect the average consciousness of the people who elect them. So if we want to have better leaders, we need to become better people. But also that we do live in a world of duality, and we do live in a world that everyone is always, even in the new paradigm, people are going to have wildly varying opinions from you. And by the way, if not more in the new paradigm, because the new paradigm has a strong emphasis on the individual. Whereas right now we're coming out of a time when the emphasis was more on the collective for the last 200 or so years. So it's time to get really comfortable with not needing to have the same opinions with people to get on well with them, or just to respect them, or just to treat them with human dignity. If something really doesn't sit right with us, we need to practice becoming the kinds of people who seek the very innocent, understandable reasons why someone else might be being a bit harsh or problematic in our energy read of them. Because are they only doing it out of fear? Are they only doing it out of need to control because they feel out of control? There's always a very human shared driver behind everything that we do, and we all have those same drivers. Even if we don't show our fear of losing control in the same arena as someone else does. And even though, yes, we have to give ourselves credit if we're someone who's prided ourselves on actually cleaning a lot of our shit up, you know, everyone's going to get there in the end. The end of the story is that everyone arrives. And so we're just on different speeds, and it's not even different levels. It's just some people take 20 years and then one day they make a quantum leap, and some people take 40 years to lay a groundwork very slowly. So it's not even for us to judge that some people are behind us or ahead of us. It's just that if you're feeling judgmental, there's an energy read opportunity for you. There's also potential that you can look at some shadow of yours. There's a potential that you look at why you are so triggered by that. And then there is also the potential that you say, look for the very sort of understandable human reason as to what's driving that. And they are just in a less conscious state than maybe I am at this very moment to be able to kind of link those two things, that their behavior to them seems like it's their organic choice. But to the extent that we are blind to our subconscious, we actually aren't free. And we actually just identify with that being a part of who we are, instead of realizing that we have a choice to be and do and think and feel and have a different opinion than we currently do. So there is also compassion for the fact that we are all in different degrees of the dark, and we don't see as clearly. So the best thing to do is to, give yourself 5 minutes to roll your eyes and to say, that kind of sucks, and I'm not okay with the things that they're doing because I feel like it's off. But then also to not get addicted to holding on to that, which I say because I have had a history of being able to do, and it's still something that I work on. But just that we are not too wrong or right, anybody. That's a spiritual clearance that we actually should not be having access to, and we should be giving that over to the light to be the judge of the court, ultimately. And the judgment really should only come at the end of our lives, not somewhere when you take a snapshot of where we are at right now, because I know for sure that there are many snapshots of my own life that I would not want to be judged on. So I try to not do the same to other people, yet allowing myself to stick by what I feel in that person and have that opinion for myself, so that maybe I can safeguard myself from that, or because it allows me to have a boundary, or it allows me to say, no, there are certain things about life that are not okay because people are choosing darkness, people are choosing lack, people are choosing control. And what we need to know is that this is a place where there is light and dark, and anything is a shade of those 2 degrees. And that's not to say that a small thing like a judgment is the most terrible thing you can do, but it's still a piece of darkness. It's not as bad as maybe doing bad to 100 people, but it's still a fact that in our movie, we are faced with a more subtle choice of light and dark. And even in those moments, we need to take it as seriously as someone who we would want to choose the difference between killing 100 people or saving 100 people. It's a more extreme in some human beings, but we have to treat our version of the subtle play between those two things extremely seriously as well, because our frequency matters, and our frequency, because we are playing in those more subtle waves of light and dark, actually has more power to elevate and entrain people who are more stuck in the more extreme ping-ponging between the two. So we have to take that stuff seriously. Someone else said, how do you commune directly with God? And I thought this was an amazing question, and you can replace God with the light, the universe, whatever you want to call it. But I think the trick with communing directly with God is that it's so direct and it's so simple and it's so easy that we miss it. You can commune directly with God anytime, anywhere you want. And yes, you get better at it and you refine it, but it's much easier for us to give our power away, to tell someone else, please connect me to God. And those things are wonderful. That's the reason we go to a healer. It's the reason we go to a prayer circle, a class, why you listen to a podcast. And there are 2 positive things that can come from that, in the sense that you can swim in other people's frequencies, which is a positive thing. You can learn from other people who are seers. Like, for example, if I go to a psychic, it's because she has a gift that I don't have that can help me, and we're all here to help ourselves. But ultimately, we want to get to a place where we don't give away the part that is most important for us to still hold on to, which is the actual direct phone line from inside of us to another part inside of us, and both are invisible, and both, it's like we don't even know how it's happening. We can't tell when we're fully in it. We don't quite know how we get out of it and in it. Sometimes it seems to go super fast, sometimes it comes slow, sometimes we've got other stress in our life, so we forget. Other times we are like in a stressful situation, so we don't know that we can still do that. We think it's only possible when we're surrounded by, a women's circle, and all these conditions that we create around it that kind of make it easier in our minds to sort of measure, like, oh, I get into it because I know I'm going to this pranayama class, or because I'm going to a fasting retreat, right? Like, that just helps our minds let it open up the spiritual connection more, or make it believe that it's more possible, or that that environment is more conducive to that. And absolutely, that's also true, because nature helps with that, love helps with that, being with other people who get you helps with that. But ultimately, it doesn't matter which environment. You can have the best environment, the best people, and the most amount of love surrounding you, and you still have to know that you have a duty. As much as it feels good to be in that, you have to actually pull yourself away from even the most beautiful environment and the most best connections with people, and just take time for you and your God, you and your inner voice, you and your light, the universe, whatever you want to call it, and get better at that one-on-one communion. And the most important thing to remember is that it will always feel the hardest when you start. Just like anything that is light has the opposite and equal force to it, right? So that doubt and that fear and the how do I know this is even coming from something else is all going to come in when you first start. And I was stuck in that for the best part of a decade, quite frankly, until I realized that, oh, no one is coming to give me this like golden seal on my forehead to say that, yay, you just did it. And no one is coming to hold my hand when I'm sitting up in bed in the morning having that conversation. And rainbows are not going to part from the sky when I had that realization. It's like it happens as these sacred moments, but in the mundaneness of life. And so it's a trip for our heads because we're like, hold on, how could I just have had such an amazing internal visceral experience and yet I'm still looking at the same alarm clock that I look at every day? And so it's weird for our minds because we tend to try to separate the sacred with the profane, but actually we're living in a world where the two are overlaid on each other and they're kind of impossible to separate, because even if you forget about sacred and profane moments and experiences and feelings, there's always your inner world and the outer world coexisting all at the same time, which is why I never know when people say, how are you? I'm like, which layer do you want? Do you want my existential layer? Do you want my today? Do you want my thoughts on where my future's going, my thoughts on where life is going, my thoughts on what I'm triggered at the moment, what my shadow is at the moment, what, my creative life is? That all of these things are happening at the same time in this like headying mix of a soup where you can't always separate what's what. And so we can't let that need to separate, this is my direct communication with God and it happens always in a certain way. It has to follow you throughout your life. It has to be with you in the airport. It has to be with you when you need it. It has to be with you not because you tell yourself you have to do it every day, but because it's something that you eventually start to feel like you can't live without. The other thing you need to know about communing directly with God is that when you ask, it is always given. And the asking is not so much about getting exactly what you want, although sometimes that does happen. But usually the intention for what you're actually asking for underneath starts to get coalesced by the cosmos to give you that exact thing. So if you are asking for a soulmate from a place of fear of being alone, what you will get given are opportunities to get over the fear of aloneness. If you are asking for a happy life, life will push you to become a happy person so that you truly can create the happiness from the inside and not have it be conditional on the outside. So when you commune directly with God, it is always on the way. It's just that it doesn't really matter so much about the specific words that you're asking for. It's what you're asking for underneath the ask, why you're asking, what you think it's going to give you. And there's always a thread in there that in order to get the thing you're asking for, there is a becoming that needs to happen of ourselves in order to quote unquote become a vibrational match for that. And actually the becoming is a thing that we really want as human beings, because we want to feel like we are people who are loving and wonderful and that we enjoy being in the skin that we're in, because we've made it such a wonderful place to be. And inside is a factory and we have made these like best potions and chemicals that then paint and bleed and affect the physical matter around us. So what we're really asking underneath everything is to become people that we love being and people that we're proud of, and then knowing that everything we then touch turns into gold. Even the shittiest of situations can be turned into a gold moment, right? If it's you who's bringing the gold, if it's you who knows there's nothing that life is going to send me that I don't have the ability to alchemize into a better version of itself, and that's why it sends me anything and everything it's going to send me. So when we talk about communing directly with God, you always want to ask yourself why it is you want the thing you want. What kind of person you think you would have to be to get that. And you would also really want to connect to the heart of the why, right? Like, because I want to feel freedom, or because I want to feel security, or because I want to trust myself, or because I want fame, because that means I'll be validated. And when you say it and you really get clear and you get honest about that, because I want to be validated, that could probably reveal to you that there's a part of you that still doesn't feel that. And then you can do something much more simple than work yourself overtime to get a kind of fame that you didn't even want, by sitting with yourself and addressing the fact that you didn't get validation as a child, or that you're addicted to validation and you want to unbecome that. And then maybe you'll get the fame, but it will be even sweeter because you've cleaned up your need for validation. So you'll be able to soak it up, if that was an authentic desire of yours, in a way that you can actually receive it, because you're not being clouded by the need for validation, and you're then not abusing and using the presence of fame to serve this egoic addiction of yours, but instead you're really able to be porous enough to enjoy the experience of what that is on this earth, which can be a beautiful thing. The problem is we just don't think that fame can be that way, because we have mostly examples of people who've used it for the aforementioned incorrect reasons. Someone else said, how do we balance the self-work and the healing and the deep stuff with fun and finding joy and being light? What I would say is that the only way we can truly be light is if we do prioritize the deep work, but also that, again, balance is a funny word, because it's like we want to see everything as coexisting all the time. There are times to be, deep. There are times to have levity. There are times to laugh. There are times to cry. There are times to be sad. There are times to be very angry. There are times to be angry at other people. And there are other times when you can be someone who is kind of easygoing, right? So I think when we ask that question about how do we balance, you know when you've started to live in one at the cost of the others, meaning that you've totally immersed yourself in deep self-work when it's become almost like a trauma response, an addiction, because that's the thing you need to do to tell yourself you're good or that you're going to be okay, versus if that has happened and you've closed yourself off from feeling light, or if you've closed yourself off from other people or from feeling connection and feeling joy, and you don't feel like those two things are rising at the same time, then that's when you need to do a rebalancing, or look at the reasons that are driving the over attention on one side versus the other. Ideally, you want to see both positively impacting the other. And really, the deep self work is only really deep self work if it's creating positive effects in your life, or positive effects in how you show up. And so if levity is something that is difficult for you, like it was for me at the beginning of my life, it's something that I specifically addressed when I did the deep self work about what was the conditioning around being heavy that I had. Why am I still attached to it? Am I afraid to let go of that? Do I think that that's just how you have to be a responsible adult, to be a good human, to be admired by people, to be taken seriously, and all this stuff? So anything that is causing you, not even pain, but anything that you desire in your life that's a feeling, you can actually use the deep spiritual work as the way to get there. So that's really the main thing to remember, is that they are supposed to go hand in hand, but that you don't want to be judging your life as kind of separating, I need to do this amount of deep work and I need to do this amount of levity and I need to do this amount, because also it's going to flux and flow so much. It always has, because you go through a season of a challenge, or you go through a season where things are really great. By the way, when things are really great, you double down on your spiritual work. But there are moments where some days you'll feel like needing to have more fun. And this happens to me. If I have a couple of days that are like really full on and really fun and really full of fun work, even, or a lot of socializing, I eventually remember that when all of that sort of comes to an end, I'm like, wow, I have to work a little bit harder today to just remember that the place I always want to come back to is my direct communion with God. That's the thing that is my sort of centering ground, that always reminds me why all of this exists in the first place. And so it's like you drink from the wells and then you go back to the other wells and you take a really balanced drink of it all. But the connection to self always comes first. And it doesn't matter if you forget about it for a few days, because we do forget, like we passively forget. The active remembering is the work. And it's hard to remember in this world. It is hard to remember. But my God, does it feel good when you re-remember it again after having accidentally forgotten about it. So, you don't have to do it every day. It's okay if you don't do it every day. It just matters that it's something to remember. There were a couple of other questions about dating and money and cities, parenting, all of these things of which are changing. I think we'll cover those in some future episodes because this one was already pretty deep. But just to know that there's no reason to be scared about the changing world. You will always create magic if you prioritize your becoming. And that the most important thing you should always ask for when you ask your guides, your light, your inner self, is you should ask for the help and the bravery to become the best version of yourself in all of your most real version of self, meaning truly live out who you specifically came here to be, individuate on your essence, like become as most expressive, your specific piece of this collective fabric that is human beings. You have to live out your design. You have to become your unique self. And you also have to have the highest consciousness that you can on the inside. You have to approach life with the highest lens of glasses that you can reach for in any given moment. And it's not one or the other, it's both. And we have to proactively remember that we have to do both at the same time. And this is honestly why human design is so magical and special, because it gives you that lighthouse in the dark against all the other flashing bright Vegas style lights to say, be this, do this. This is who you should be. This is what you should think. And human design is just this quiet roadmap that says, just come back to this all the time. Just come back to your real self and be brave enough to advocate for him or her against all the other bright and shiny artificial lights. That really, again, if we come back to where we started, are that dark side trying to help you push against that to do the thing you came here to be, which is become who you came here to be. And so, of course, the game would be perfectly set up that there's a lot of distractions convincing you very well to do the opposite until you turn around, shine a light on them, and talk back to them and say, I see what you're doing. I see that you're here as a messenger of the light to push me. And I'm just not going to listen to you. I'm going to listen to my inner self, my inner soul, my soul's whispers. I'm going to be brave when it seems like so risky. And I see you, I hear you, but I know that if I just pop you is when you disappear. And all I do to pop you is take a maybe tiny little bit of open-mindedness that you might not just be real. Here's to your rising.